there's so much history wrapped up around all of the wampum belts. Some of them exist but don't really have a history that anyone knows anymore. And some of them tell the really sad story or are records of treaties that were made and then broken. I like the imagery on the belts, and I thought that would be a good subject for making prints. I did, as I recall, probably maybe 15 of those, but I've done things using the wampum belt imagery, a number of things. But the series of prints that I did that has wampum belt imagery in it, except for a couple of them, there's no particular message I'm trying to relay in any given one. I'm mostly just using the pieces of the different wampum belt imagery and assembling them together into what I hope is an interesting visual representation of sort of a collage of wampum belts without trying to describe any particular one or relay a message related to a given wampum belt. A clay print is a monoprint. It's an image created by a print-making process that creates a unique image. It's a system that doesn't make multiples. The first thing you do is you roll out a slab of clay, ordinary potting clay, whatever size you want, about a half an inch thick. And you build up on that clay using china white, porcelain slip, the white clay or the almost pure white clay. You use this white clay and add pigments to it, and you build up an image on this slab of clay. You might ask why bother using a slab of clay? Wet clay provides a reservoir of moisture that prevents your water-based pigments from drying out right away. And it gives you as much working time as you want, as long as you don't let the slab of clay dry out. So when you've got the image that you want, the best substrate to print on is a material called rime, which is a woven polyester fabric. It's canvas-like. And you transfer the image from the slab of clay into this woven polyester canvas. And because of the nature of the substrate, it absorbs the pigments very nicely, and you get a nice, strong image. And it's a unique print. But interesting thing about the process is that after you make a print, you may have residual image left on the plate that will allow you to pull another print. But the second print isn't going to be the same because first print removed pigment. More often than not, you pull one print, and then if you want to do another print, you've got to work on the slab a little bit more to get an image that you want. It's not a user-friendly medium. But what the clay printing process gives you, it gives you an opportunity to create imagery that would be difficult to do by direct painting. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I was a research chemist for 30 years. I dabbled on art all my life. I grew up in Utica, and it was the summers. I spent all my summers up at St. Regis, but I went to school and grew up in Utica. We lived 3 blocks away from the Munson Williams Proctor Art Institute, which is an absolutely awesome place. And I used to take classes there when I was a kid. But I was more interested in science and went into the sciences and actually went to Utica College and did graduate work at the University of Chicago, got a PhD at the University of Chicago, organic chemistry. The next 30 years, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. And I dabbled over the years while I was working. I took lots of workshops and classes in oil, watercolor, and pastel, and sculpture. I even took a whole semester course in bronze casting. But then I retired. When I got to retire in 95, the first thing I did was to try something new, doing handmade paper. And there's a guild of paper makers around Philadelphia. There's an active group, and there were a couple of really good paper making studios you could get working time in there and elsewhere. And I did handmade paper for a while, and I started going to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, doing printmaking. And I went there for 7 years, and I took everything in their printmaking course. I didn't want a degree program, but I did the courses, and they were really nice. I made good friends with the director of the printmaking department. A few years after I did their courses, I could register as a continuing ed student in a printmaking course, and that gave me a student card, and I could come in and work in the studio anytime there wasn't a class going on in the studio, which meant 3.5 days a week. I had access to the Academy's printmaking department. So that was fantastic. So I probably did more etchings and monotypes than anything else. And so I did that for about 7 years, and that's pretty much it. Then since then, I just work on whatever I feel like working on. I'm an experimenter with mediums. That's one of the reasons I dabbled in all of these different mediums, is because I like to play with them. Gee, I do a lot of different things. I can only work on one thing for about so long before I've got to work on something else. I always need to change and do something else. I think it's related to my interest in science. I think I basically take kind of a research approach to art, to a medium. I like to try and find a way of doing something different. I've never really had any interest in creating art that looked like somebody else's. I like it when somebody looks at one of my things and says, "How did you do that?" Then I have to explain how I did it.